Hello friends, my name is Eric Cloward and welcome to the Stoic Coffee Break. The Stoic Coffee Break is a weekly podcast where I take an aspect of Stoicism and do my best to break it down to its most important points. I share my experiences, both my successes and my failures, and hope that you can learn something from it and make your life a little bit better. Today's episode is called Show Up. How do you show up in the world? Are you acting the way that you want to? Are you being the person that you want to be? If not, why not? In today's episode, I want to talk about how to live with integrity and to be the person you want to be. Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself. Marcus Aurelius. One of the most important things that we can do in our lives is to live with integrity. Now, what do I mean by integrity? The word integrity has several definitions, but my favorite is something that is sound or whole. It also has the same root as integrated, and so for me, integrity means that you are a person who is integrated and that your words match your choices and actions. So how does this kind of integrity show up in our daily lives? When we live with integrity, we live our lives in such a way that we hold to our principles and values, even when, or especially when, there is pressure on us to do otherwise. When others would have you bend to what they want, you hold true to the principles that are important for you. It means that you follow those principles when no one else is watching. It means that you are the same person that you want to be, regardless of what anyone else says or does. So what are the things that get in our way when we try to live this kind of life? I think there are plenty of things that happen in our lives that can knock us off the path and make our life a little bit more challenging. When we hit these kind of circumstances, we often blame them for the problems in our lives. We may use them as excuses to give up. But I think that when we do this, we're forgetting that these challenges are the thing we're trying to overcome and work through. They're the things that make us stronger. They're the things that build our character. And wishing these things away or placing blame on why those things outside of ourselves cause us to not be the kind of person we want is not stepping up and taking responsibility for ourselves. Another thing that can make it challenging for us to live with integrity is when we get caught up in worrying about the opinions of others. If we do things because we just want others to like us or to praise us, we can lose our sense of who we are, and we may do things that we really don't want to do. An example of this was when I was in 6th grade. I really wanted to be liked by a bunch of older kids, and one time after school, we wanted to get into the school so that we could get some of the soft drinks from the vending machine. We hatched a plan where I would climb on the top of the school and drop myself off into the atrium. The door of the atrium wasn't quite closed all the way, and so I would be able to open it and then let the other kids in. Unfortunately, things didn't go quite to plan, and I got caught by the janitor and got in trouble the next day with the principal, all because I wanted to be liked by these other kids. I think the last part of living with integrity is that we often don't know exactly who we are and what we want. The culture that we live in has a very large influence on what we hold as valuable. And in some cultures, being strong and tough is something that is valued. In others, it might be beauty or money or intelligence and kindness. Through our families, schools, media, churches, and community, every one of us is exposed to explicit and subtle messages about what our culture thinks we should value and what kind of person we should be. These external values and expectations that we're given can have a strong influence on us our whole lives. So how do we decide who we want to be and how we want to show up in the world? How do we become a more integrated person and a person who lives with integrity? Know first who you are, then adorn yourselves accordingly. Epictetus. First and foremost, we need to get to know ourselves and what we truly value. And this is not an easy process because we have to learn to be really honest with ourselves. We all have a set of beliefs that we hold on to try and make sense of the world. And when we question these belief systems that we grew up with, it can be really uncomfortable and downright unsettling. We may find that many of them are unhelpful or don't stand up to scrutiny. It may mean that we have to make some very disruptive changes in our lives, and it may mean cutting out people that are unwilling to support us in our growth. So when I left the Mormon Church, it was a slow and drawn-out process. I never really felt like it was the right thing for me, but because I had been told my whole life that it was the only truth, it was really hard to even question in the first place whether or not I should stay. I reached a point where I felt like I just couldn't live the way that the church wanted, even if it was true. But over time, I realized that the real question was not whether I could live it or not, but did I believe it because I thought it was the truth? Or did I just believe it because it's what I had been told my whole life over and over? Once I was willing to open up and question that belief system, I found that I'd only held on to it because it was what was expected of me. I was doing it to please others. Once we decide to question our belief systems, we need to expose ourselves to all kinds of different ideas. And we need to be willing to consider ideas that, at first, might feel very uncomfortable. We need to be willing to have an open mind and try to consider things from all kinds of different perspectives. And this can include doing things like reading books on challenging ideas. It may mean having respectful discussions with people that you may have very strong differing opinions with. And we should also be willing to let go of ideas that just don't serve us. I know for me, a big influence was the time that I spent in Austria. It was so different from the culture that I grew up in, and it exposed me to a whole different set of values and different ideas that I might not have ever considered. I met people from all over the world, ate all kinds of different food, and learned about historical events and places that really changed my worldview that probably wouldn't have happened if I had just stayed in my small part of the world. So Epictetus said, "If you decide to live by lofty principles, be prepared to be laughed at by others. You may hear snide remarks, 'Oh, here comes the philosopher,' or 'Why are you so pretentious?' Just ignore those comments, but make sure that you don't become pretentious. If you stick to your principles, people who make fun of you will eventually come around and may even admire you. However, if you let others influence you to give up what you started, you will be ridiculed twice, firstly for following these principles, and secondly for giving them up." The last idea that I want to talk about how to live with integrity is that once we learn who we are and we decide the kind of person that we want to be, we need to learn how to ignore what other people think of us. And this is often really hard because we want to be liked by others. But if other people are not going to like us for who we really are, then they are people we probably don't want to be around. Also, what others think is not under our control. So, in the Stoic tradition, we need to just let go of that. If we let what others think of us change how we act, then we're giving control to them. We should be the person that we want to be, regardless of what others think or wish us to be. Living with integrity is probably one of the most challenging things you can do in your life. When you live with integrity, you take full responsibility for your emotions, thoughts, and actions. You stay true to who you are, no matter what others think of you. You make choices and take actions that align with your character, even when it's hard and even when no one is watching. And that's the end of this week's Stoic Coffee Break. Be good to yourself, be good to others, and thanks for listening.